G'day YouTube, warbles on a lot here. Normally I try to make videos with a blue sky so that you get a blue screen effect. I know I can get rid of the bright background if I can frame so as to only show the ground, but there's not much blue sky around here and now today. So it's going to rain heavier later on today. It was raining yesterday. If I want to go to town and get a loaf of bread, I got to do it on the bike. Now put up with the sky, video it, because I want to talk to you about the Trumpocalypse Chronicle number 7, the Autarchy of MAGA-Muskistan. Okay, we should be rolling. I think the camera's centered on my chest. So, the Autarchy of MAGA-Muskistan. Well, an autarchy is sort of like an autocracy where there's one in command, but this particular autocrat has installed himself, has taken control. It's what they call a state capture exercise, and he's behaving like a king. I've said for quite a long time that Elon Musk has been using what used to be Twitter and is now X as a vehicle for pumping his idea of how the world should be out to the people who don't spend a lot of time thinking. The people who never did learn to read for enjoyment. The people who get all of their news off populist entertainment channels like Fox Entertainment. And because they've got such a limited view of the world outside of their own personal experience, they're pretty easy to convince to believe whatever you want them to believe. And in the space of a couple of weeks, Elon and the Musketeers have done a tremendous amount of deconstruction and unravelling and delamination of the American government administration, finance, regulatory bureaus, or mechanisms, departments, slashing and hacking and cutting interior communications, all of it being camouflaged basically by the Sturm and Drang of flooding the zone with shit and getting everybody all upset about what he's doing to the transsexuals and the transgenders and what he calls DEI, diversity, equity and inclusion. They're trying to make out as if there used to be a time when only people who merited promotion used to get promotion, and by the vagaries of Darwinian social evolution, that meant that white men got all the really good jobs and a few white women, and then coloureds, browns, yellows, reds, lesser breeds before the law, they all did what they were told and were wasting their time if they aspired to ever ascending very far. And here's the other thing, apparently even though the African Americans make up a minority of the US population, I don't know whether it's 10 or 15%, it's somewhere around there, maybe 30 or 40% of the US federal government permanent employees are African Americans. And think this is the first video on the new battery, by the way, and the truly discerning may notice that the bike is maintaining 49 kilometres, no drama at all, whereas usually along here it's about 48, even though we're going down a slight hill. Anyway, the thing is, African Americans are about 3 times their demographic constituency in the federal government. So gutting federal government agencies is basically a way of re-implementing pre-civil rights era levels of institutionalised racism. It's federally illegal to teach anything at all whatsoever about critical race theory, which is the idea that if your great-grandparents and grandparents weren't able to get a house loan, so they couldn't buy a house on a housing estate in an area where there was public transport and decent employment, then they didn't hand anything on to their kids who didn't hand anything on to their kids, and that's why so many African Americans are paying rent and working minimum wage jobs in casual situations. It's because there is an inbuilt race-based bias in the social structure. Well, that's now illegal to mention that in a classroom if there's any federal funds going to the school in which the classroom is a part. America used to be a representative constitutional democracy. It's not anymore. The Vice President Vance has floated the notion that no judge should have any right to tell the President what not to do. Well, that's absolute total lies, claptrap, nonsense, fabrication. How the hell did that idiot make it out of law school? Because he is a lawyer. He's claiming that it's illegal for a judge to say to the President, no, that's unconstitutional, you can't make that executive order. Stop. Go back, you're going the wrong way. It was kind of difficult to see what the end game was for all the chaos that Musk is doing with Trump's blessing. Somebody mentioned within my YouTubular hearing the concept that what's going on is all federal human employees are being retrenched, fired, got rid of, and they're being replaced by artificial intelligence running the government department that used to have humans in it, and the artificial intelligence running the government department is being programmed by Elon and the Musketeers. So yeah, life is going to get a little bit more dangerous for the people who live in America and like to think independent thoughts. It's not all beer and skittles in the excited status of Norte Americano. But apparently there's a bit of a fashion among the Canadians. They're calling the bit of land south of their border North Mexico. I still reckon MAGA-Muskistan fits pretty well. What you've got, see, once you get into the habit of riding outside the fog line, you keep doing it. Nobody behind me there for that last 200 metres. What are we at? 96%. And we're 5 k's from home. maintaining 48. So yeah, meanwhile, one of the congressmen has actually tabled a bill proposing to rename Greenland, brace yourselves, red, white and blue land. Apparently, lots and lots and lots of people in busyness in America and in Europe are too bloody terrified to say anything because of their corporate financial connections for something that Elon's got a finger in. Specifically, apparently the reason the entire electric vehicle industry is staying absolutely quiet is that if they demur at all whatsoever about anything that Tesla is doing, they can find themselves locked out of the fast charging network. So not only can they not charge their own personal car because they spoke out against Elon, but their company can't access them either. Their whole corporate fleet could just become paperweights. And that aspect of it hadn't occurred to me, but yeah, pretty soon Elon's artificial intelligence is going to be in a position to decree who gets how much social security, which veterans get pensioned, who gets what hospital treatment, who gets what food aid, what schools get any help at all whatsoever. Basically, Elon seems to want to take what used to be the United States of America and transform it into his own personal, private, feudal fiefdom. And you got to remember, Elon is a pretty weird sort of a dude. He's apparently as bald as a coot. That thing on his head is a wig, glued on there, like my bloody false teeth. He's got prosthetic hair on his head to try and look younger for longer. He literally is a wine-bred, incestuous, racist Nazi. His mother immigrated from Canada to Pit Bothas, South Africa in 1948 because her father was a white supremacist who just wanted to live somewhere where he could treat blackfellas like shit in a slave-based, race-oriented economy. That was Elon's mother. She still speaks glowingly about him in the media, gives interviews defending him, boasting about him. Elon is mummy's little boy. His father doesn't like him because I don't know at what point in the parents' marriage it occurred, but Elon acquired a step-sister, so I'm guessing Elon's father must have shacked up with somebody else and raised her kids while he kept his kids, or maybe the kids migrated between the households. But the point is that Elon's father subsequently had 2 children with Elon's stepsister. And if you ever want to get your mind around the idea of how many Americans either indulge in or fantasize about relationships with step-siblings, step-parents, step-aunties and step-uncles, just go into any one of many websites that deal in pornography and type in step-family sex and see how many bloody replies you get. It's apparently quite mainstream over there. So yeah, Elon's father took away his adolescent stepsister fantasy and planted a couple of kids in her. So that's the nature of the dispute between the emerald miner and his son. And whereas most white South Africans run away from the end of the apartheid regime and they come to Australia because that's where they could already treat blackfellas like shit, Elon decided to go to America, get as rich as he could on credit, and then buy a president and transform America into his idea of what Pik Botha's apartheid regime should have been like, with Elon and his computerised muskrats running the government with artificial intelligence. It's very much a case of shit, oh dear, what do you do from here? You can watch it going on. You can vaguely predict the direction of the trajectory of the suddenly altered state of events. Meanwhile, I think it's 2032, there's an asteroid due to pass between the Earth and the Moon, and they think it's fairly likely to smack into somewhere along the equator at about the 22nd of December. If it's going to coordinate with Earth, but based on what they know about orbital geometry, that's when it's going to come back and modify a few things. So technically there's 7 years left before the bloody next asteroid comes and drops something about, the size of a megaton range bomb on the equator somewhere. Scott Manley was pointing out that America's unlikely to be wanting to do anything about it because America doesn't own any land on the equator unless you count the Panama Canal, which Trumpy has a deep desire to own shortly. I'm wondering how it feels for all of the people who either supported Trump from a distance because he was a Christian, or they supported Trump because he was against going to war. I watched an interview with him this morning with the King of Jordan pulling faces and looking like he was in a proctologist's clinical consulting room. Very uncomfortable he looked. Maybe not quite a Francian needle biopsy, but he was getting deeply upset. And Trumpy was asked, you spoke the other day about buying Gaza. He said, we don't need to buy it. It's a war-torn ground. We're just going to take it. It'll be ours. And it doesn't matter what the people who live there think or want. They will be happy to go away. And he was asked, well, what do you think about people who say that's called ethnic cleansing? And he says, well, I don't care what they say. It's what I'm going to do. So yeah, the excited status of Norte Americano has descended to become the medieval feudal fiefdom of Felon Musk. The very bloody first thing he did was to shut down all the government departments which were taking Tesla to court, taking SpaceX to court, looking into his various doings on the grounds that it was unconstitutional. At this point, he looks like he's won. He's walking and talking like he's won. And all I can say is that pride goeth before a fall, and the greater the pride, the higher the fall. And I greatly anticipate the thrill of Schadenfreude watching when Elon Musk's just desserts catches up with him. Now, it does occur to me that at some point in time someone from the anti-Trump, anti-Musk side of the population, and that's getting to be a bigger and bigger group every day, they're going to be tempted to try and apply a Second Amendment alteration to the numbers of the Congress and the Senate, Just make sure there's a couple of Republican congressmen and senators who are not in a fit condition to vote anywhere at any time about anything, and then the numbers would change, and then in theory the Congress and the Senate might be able to achieve something. Somebody likes being very hot in the sun. But I throw my mind back to about November the 5th or 6th in 2020 when Trump was president. He knew he'd lost the election and he was preparing to stage a balls-out coup at the time, and he was changing the Secretary of State for Defence to somebody who was a lot more pliable. Don't know whether this is a truck or a Winnebago, but I've got the opportunity. It's a truck. Got the opportunity to let them go past. My latest trick when I can get away with it, and quite honestly that set of bloody between the rails multiple overtakes back at Yarraford was interesting enough for one day when I can modify the risk rating. So yeah, where was I? Rabbiting on about the manifest shittiness of Trump and Musk. But oh, I can't pick up that particular thread. Disappeared in the traffic management. But yeah, I don't think there's going to be too many people in America who are prepared to resist just a little bit. And I don't know how long it's going to be before they get into the situation where there's enough people who are pissed off. Oh, that's what I was talking about. The Second Amendment adjustment to the Senate and the Congress. What I feared was going to happen back in November of 2020 was that as soon as Trump got the excuse he would declare a state of emergency and suspend the Constitution and stop the counting of the votes until the end of the emergency. And I think as soon as anybody shoots a congressman or a senator, that's exactly and precisely what's going to go on. America will become just like Germany after the burning of the Reichstag. Trump will have his excuse for the Enabling Act. He will declare himself absolute dictator for the duration of the emergency, and the emergency is never going to end because global warming is not slowing down, it's accelerating. Last year, temperature went up by 0.09 of a degree, so it's 11 years per degree worth of temperature rise globally at the moment. 83%. After 15 kilometres, 83% remaining, that is. Haven't used 83%, used 17%. So, did you hear they got Mary Poppins to come up with a theme song for the Times? How's it go? Stupid, callous, fragile, racist, sexist, Nazi POTUS, even though the sound of it is totally atrocious. That is what they voted for, that is what they're stuck with. Until maybe perhaps a civil war can possibly restore America's faith as was before in constitutional democracy. I don't know what luck we're going to have with it, but I've got to the hardware shop and I need to get home before the bloody rain starts. So, Warbles on a lot of YouTube. Bit disjointed, but such is life. Ciao.